Yesterday, I left you with two questions. First of all, why the Luke account of the Transfiguration talked about 8 days later, while the uh, Mark and Matthew translation talked about 6 days later. Well, the answer is the fact that, first of all, Jesus didn't say in 6 days or 8 days you're going to see the kingdom. He said some are standing here that will not die before they. But the other is, it's really easy to count part days as days. Therefore, if someone was halfway through a Monday and halfway through a Wednesday, they might be able to add 2 days easily to what somebody else was counting as 6 days. So not a big deal one way or the other, particularly since Jesus didn't promise in a certain number of days, but also because it's easy to see how you could add 2 days to a time frame that the others said 6 days. The second question that we ran into was Peter answered. That's found in Mark 9:5, and the question is, well, who said something to Peter that he answered? And again, there's a real easy explanation for that, and that is that Moses and Elijah were talking to Jesus, and they were talking about his trip to Jerusalem, where he would suffer and die, 3 days be raised, and all of the suffering would go through. And it's very possible that Peter was interrupting, overhearing that conversation, or eavesdropping, if you will, on that conversation, and said, Lord, it'd be good if we just stayed here and built 3 tabernacles. You want me to go ahead and build 3 tabernacles. So both very easy explanations of these apparent difficulties. Today we want to look at AD 29, event 50, the epileptic that is healed. This is after they had come back down. There was a large crowd. Scribes were arguing with the crowd. When Jesus appeared, they ran to him. Jesus asked, what are you discussing? One man said, my son is possessed with a spirit, and it makes him mute. And the spirit seizes him and dashes him to the ground. He foams from the mouth. His body stiffens, and your disciples couldn't heal him. Jesus said, oh, you unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? Bring him to me. And when the spirit saw Jesus, he threw the young man into convulsions, and rolling on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the man how long his son had been doing these things, and he said since his childhood, and is often thrown into fire and water. If you can do anything, please take pity on us. Now, Matthew says, have mercy. My son's a lunatic, very ill from the spirit. And it tells us that Jesus said, what do you mean if? All things are possible for those who believe. And the Father said, I do believe, help my unbelief. One of the most famous sayings that we have about belief and faith, and certainly one that I think all of us can relate to. We believe, but we need some help with some of our unbelief sometimes. As the crowd was appearing, Jesus rebuked the unclean spirits, and the deaf and dumb spirit left the boy, and the boy was crying out and having convulsions as the spirit was leaving him, and he was there like a corpse. Some thought he was dead. Jesus took the boy by the hand and raised him, got him up, and later his disciples questioned him in the house why they couldn't cast out the demon, and he said this kind requires prayer. Now, there's very little extra because the accounts in both Matthew 17 and Luke 9 are much shorter than the account in Mark of this event. The only thing that Luke really adds at all is on the next day, and he was only a boy. In Matthew, we don't see much except mercy instead of pity. Lunatic, we see the boy cured at once. However, at the very end of this event, we do see two things that are quite interesting. And that is in the Matthew account, Jesus said, if you'd have the faith of the seed of a mustard seed, the size of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. And that's, again, a very famous saying. And it shows that it's not the amount of faith, but it is the faith that we would need to have. And certainly we find that this is an incredible event. I can only remember back probably 30 years ago when we had a dog which would go into epileptic seizures, and we didn't know what it was at first because we'd never seen anything like it. And we had to put the dog on pills that would keep her from having additional epileptic seizures. But it is quite a frightening thing to see the very first time. You have no idea what's going on, whether the dog's been poisoned or what's going on. And certainly I have now since then seen humans that have gone into epileptic seizures, and it is quite frightening both for the person going through it and for any that have never seen it before and are seeing it for the first time. What you want to do, of course, is keep a person from biting their tongue, make them as comfortable as possible. They will come out of the seizure. Keep them cool and comfortable, and again, keep them from biting their own tongue. Those are important things to do. Certainly, if you're observing this and somebody is also giving medical treatment, pray. Pray for them. It is a very tiring thing for those going through the seizures, very frightening thing for everybody involved. So hope that you don't have to see that, but if you do, that's what needs to be done. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day. Have a great weekend. Don't forget to go to church.